Hey everyone, it is Chrissy. Welcome back to the Pinovate YouTube channel. This tutorial is for our DIY wooden stitch kits. These are absolutely adorable. Anybody can make these, and you have multiple different styles and types that you can make, including our ugly sweater, a bookmark, or even some wall art. So follow along and we'll make this together. In your stitch kit, you are going to receive the project with all of your holes on it, whether it be the bookmark, ugly sweater, or a wall piece, as well as a backing with 3M adhesive on it, an assortment of embroidery floss, a needle, as well as a design layout where you can actually pre-plan and come up with your own creation before you start stitching. The only other things that you're going to need would be some scissors, a permanent marker, and either felts or pencil crayons to plan out your design. All of our wooden projects are cut with a laser cutter. So that being said, it can actually cause a little bit of burn marks onto the wood. It does smell like a campfire, which is actually really nice. I enjoy it. But if you don't like the burn marks on there, just take a little bit of sandpaper, give that top layer of sand, and they should come off quite easily. For your embroidery floss included in the kit, if you are looking to have more of a color variety, or if you run out of color and you need more, you can buy these at any craft store or any craft department, and any sort of embroidery floss will work for this project. Okay, so the very first step is actually threading our needle. So when you get your little skein of floss, you're just gonna find the end and you're gonna start pulling. So rather than undoing everything and pulling off the little tags, if you just find that tail and pull, it actually keeps everything all together and it doesn't get tangled. So I have a little bit of floss here. I'm gonna cut this off. And the easiest way I find to thread the needle is you're going to take that hole right at the top there, the eye of the needle. I'm going to place my thread over it, pinch that nice and tight, and then that little bubble I'm going to squeeze into my needle. So this actually prevents it from having all of those ends fraying at the end and struggling to get that through. So once your needle is threaded, we are ready to move on. So all of the stitches that I'm going to show you work on any of our projects. So whatever sort of stitch kit you receive, you can plan and prep according to these stitches what you want your project to look like and design it yourself. All right, so once you have your needle threaded, your first option is to either double up your floss so it is thick and use, it's like you're using 2 strands at once. This is gonna make your project a little bit thicker, or you can use a single strand and just pull the tail down a little bit like this. So you'll end up using only one portion of the string. So depending on what you're looking for, this is all single strand. So you can actually see all of the stitches nice and clearly. Or if you use double strand, it's going to be a little bit bulkier and thicker, but it gives it a really cool texture, just depending on what you are looking for. So that is your first option, is to choose either your single strand or double it up and make it 2 and do a double strand. Okay, so the first stitch I'm gonna show you is called a cross stitch. It literally makes a cross or an X in each of these little holes, or a combination of 4 holes to make a square. Okay, so on your project, again, you have a front and a back. Pick the best side is gonna be your front, obviously. And I'm gonna come up from the back. Again, choose if you're doing single strand or double strand. Now, when I'm doing this, I don't actually tie a knot on the back, so I'm gonna show you why. I'm gonna leave a tail, but I'm just going to kind of keep it loose. And what's gonna happen is as I'm doing my stitches, that tail is gonna get sewn into the back. So I don't have to have a knot or anything on the back, and it tries to keep the back nice and flat as well. So I'm gonna leave a bit of a tail. And in order to do a cross stitch, what you're going to do is go diagonally in one direction, and then you're going to go diagonally back in the opposite direction. So now you have an X. There, so I have a little X. My bottom diagonal is always going to go in the same direction, and my top is always going to go in the same direction. So the easiest way to do that, if you have a whole bunch of cross stitch in an area, is to do all the bottom and then come back and do all the top. That way you're ensuring that the cross is always the same direction. So I'm going to make all of my bottom diagonals first. Okay, so I have all of my bottom stitches done for my cross stitch. They're all going in one direction diagonal. So now I can actually go back and do the top in all of those areas so they have a uniform look to each of them. There, so I finished my second stitch along there, and all of my little cross stitches or all my little X's are all uniform. Everything is facing the same direction, and it's nice because it ensures that those are all the same direction. They are all uniform, and you're covering a big area at once, so that it helps you progress along smoothly. So a couple tips when you are doing all of your stitches on here. If you did your first section one color and then you have to move on to another section, but then you come back to your first original color, you don't actually have to cut off that floss and then start over. So you know what, I'm gonna move up some. I'm actually just gonna go right up here. Okay, I'm gonna skip that area and I'm gonna start a whole new row up here without cutting my thread. It's just going to lay nice and flat along the back, and it's going to weave in that tail that I left at the beginning without knotting it. So I'm going to do another row of cross stitch right across. So again, doing all of my diagonals in one section first, all the way across, and then coming back doing the top diagonal all the way back. So you know what, I'm actually only going to do a portion of these across and leave this for maybe another design over here. So I have my diagonals going one direction, now I'm going to cross them and go back the other direction. There we go, so I have another little section of cross stitch here. Again, I did all the same direction one way, and then the top stitch going back the other way. So again, I've moved from here to here in the back. I didn't cut my thread at all, and my tail has been woven in, so it's gonna lay nice and flat. So now that I'm finished, I need to weave this last part of my floss into my stitches and trim it off. So in order to do that, I'm just going to lay my needle nice and flat, push it through underneath a few of the stitches here on the back side, pull it through, and then I'm going to trim that. And again, it's not bulky with lots of knots on the back, it's going to lay relatively flat. And then that's the end of, that's how you do your cross stitch. Okay, so the next stitch I'm going to show you is going to be what's called a running stitch. So again, I'm going to go up from the back, starting it in the exact same manner. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail, and that's going to get woven in as I stitch along. All right, so a running stitch. So this basically means you're going up and down and up and down, and you're going in a constant forward motion as well. So down, and then when I go, I'm going to go up the next hole here, and then down the next one as well. So this is going to end up looking like a dashed line when you're driving down the highway. Okay, it's going to give you little dashes all the way along. So this isn't going to be a solid line, it's just going to have little marks. right, so here with the running stitch, you can see it's leaving little kind of almost like polka dots, but not. They're like tiny little dashes with gaps in between. So using that same sort of manner, I can actually make it slightly larger. Maybe I do every 2 stitches instead and leave a bigger area. Okay, so if I go over 2, I'm gonna come up the next one, leaving that gap. So same sort of idea, but they're gonna be bigger dashes with bigger spaces in between. Okay, so that is a running stitch, and that's where you are leaving a little bit. You're going on the top and then the bottom, and then the top and then the bottom, and you do have some spaces in between all of those stitches. So that is your running stitch. So another option you have with the running stitch is you can actually go back in and fill those spaces with a different color of floss. So I'm going to go in and do that with some orange now. So again, I'm going to go up where I need to fill in that gap in between, and I'm leaving a tail. Okay, and then now I'm doing the same stitch, but I'm putting that floss in between in those gaps, and you're going to create almost like a patterned effect. And there you go. So again, that is still the running stitch, just using it as a different color and a different pattern as an option for your stitch kit. All right, so we have our cross stitch, we have our running stitch, and I'm going to show you our back stitch. So this actually creates a solid line of the same color. Okay, so I'm going to go up from the bottom again. As always, leave that little bit of a tail on the back. And I like to work with a little bit shorter thread lengths because you can always add more. If they're too long, they have a tendency to get tangled. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail there on the back. Again, not knotting it, I just like to leave it loose and it gets all woven in. So now I'm going to start it the same way as my running stitch. I'm going to go up from the back and then down through the front. Okay, and I'm going to miss that next one. I'm going to go up the next hole, just like I would be doing with a running stitch. But instead of now going forward, I'm actually going to go back into that same hole that I came out of before. And now this is going to make the stitches touch. And this is going to create a line of all the same colors. I'm going to go up the next free space, and then back down into the one prior. So that's why it's called a back stitch, because you're always going to end up going backwards into the hole that you were already in. Okay, so up the next available free space, and then back down into where your thread already was. So it is touching and it is creating a solid line. And there we go, we have our back stitch. So again, that's making a nice solid line between each of those holes with the same color. Okay, so those are the 3 major stitches that you'll need to know for all of our wooden stitch kits. So the cross stitch that makes the X, that fills in most of the space if you need to fill in a big area. And so those are our 3 major stitches for our wooden stitch kits. We have, again, the cross stitch, and that fills in a lot of area. If you have a big spot that you need to cover, this is the stitch to use. We have our running stitch. So again, this is more of a dashed look, but you can alternate with colors to make it look a little bit more vibrant. And we have our back stitch. So this is what's going to create a solid line for any of the detail work in your piece. So for example, this piece here, this was all cross-stitched on the inside. It's nice and thick. And then this little line here was considered, that is our back stitch right there. And in another sample, we have all of the cross stitching on the sides here. This would be our back stitch, but this was done diagonally in a different, for a different look. We have some thinner cross stitch along the edging, as well as our even thinner back stitch here. So just depending on the color, the stitch, how you want to make it look, all of those stitches will do magnificent things on your wooden projects. So another option for your pieces as well is any of these running stitch or back stitch. These can also be going diagonal, like in the sample that I just showed you. So you're basically just connecting dot to dot to dot. So whatever works best for your project. We can't wait to see how they turn out. Okay, so now that you know all of the different stitches, you can go ahead and you can start designing your layout. So you should receive a guide that you can plan and prep before you start doing your project. So I like to use colored markers or pencil crayons that go with the color of embroidery floss that I have. And I'm gonna just start drawing in here what I would like to create. So remember, a cross stitch is actually going to be connecting 4 together all the way across, and a back stitch or a running stitch are going to be creating a line like this. So go ahead and plan out your project and you can get started. Okay, so I did up a quick little sample of my layout. I have some cross stitch at the top and bottom, as well as my initial on the inside there. And then I have some running stitches along the side. And you don't have to fill in the whole thing. If you want to just leave some wood as part of your project, you can absolutely do that as well. The bookmark is kind of handy because you can have it as a Christmas ornament. You can use words, you can do it sideways and write a word. You can make little images on there, or you can just do a really cool pattern on there as well. So lots of different options. All right, so now it's time to assemble the backing on your stitch kit. So once you are finished your project, so I'm just gonna use my little sample here with my few little stitches. You're gonna flip it over. So again, your back is gonna have some knots and some loose threads, and that's okay. We have a backing for you. So that's gonna get all covered up and it's gonna look nice and new and clean and fresh. So on one side of your backing, you have a 3M adhesive with paper. So you're going to peel that off. And on the back of it, it has this cute little logo, made with love by, and our DIY delivery. So we're gonna assemble this. We're gonna peel this paper backing off. Okay, and you have a layer of that 3M adhesive. Now this should work really well. I have another sample here that was really, really thick, and it held really well together as well. So I'm going to place this above. I'm not gonna stick it just yet. I wanna make sure that it's all lined up. So I'm going to just hover the backing over the back of my stitches. I'm gonna line up the holes to make sure that they are centered first before I press anything down. So I want my edges and my hole at the top to be lined up before I start pressing anything down. Okay, and once that's lined up, give it a good squish. And you have a finished back of your bookmark or sweater or art piece. Now, what's really cute about this is the Made with Love by. If you use a permanent marker on there, you can actually sign your name. Okay, so the last little bit of your project is this hole at the top if you have a bookmark or an ornament. So you'll either have a tassel or you'll have some floss to hang it on your tree. All right, so to make the tassel, I cut a couple little pieces of floss. Now you want it to be doubled, so double the length of what you want dangling off. So say if I just wanted here, I'm gonna make it double, but I will trim that afterwards. It's better to go longer than shorter, and you can always trim it. So you can make it one single floss, you can make it multiple, you can make it nice and thick, like this one, whatever you like. But you're going to take a bunch of your floss, like this, match your ends up together, and find the center kind of little loop or little bubble. Okay, and with that bubble, you're going to squish that in to the hole all the way through. And when you have that little loop on the other side, you're going to take your tail and pull it right through so it attaches. And there you have your tassel. If you have an ornament, all you have to do is tie a double knot at the top, and you can use that to hang on your tree. So my tassel, I find, is a little bit long, so I'm just gonna take my scissors and give it a little haircut here, just like that. And then I am done. And I love the colors of this one. I love all the color combination. But you can create it however you like, and I'm super excited to see how they turn out. Thank you so much for following along our wooden DIY stitch kits. These are so much fun, so cute. I can't wait to see how yours turn out. So these ugly sweaters, they don't even have to be ugly sweaters. These could be like football jerseys, whatever you make them. Okay, and our bookmarks, these could be ornaments. These could have a name across them, however you decide. I'm really excited to see what you come up with. So please, when you are done, please tag us on Instagram at Pinovate and DIY Delivery, and follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and all of the things. So thank you so much for following along, and we'll see you soon. Bye.